we're live. All right. Week 10 waiver wire pickup show, as always. Presented by Flurry Sports. I'm Luke Reimer. He is Ashton Rich. We are here to give you everything you need to know about your waiver wire duties, your waiver wire pickups, your waiver wire moves, anything you want to call it. We're here to give you a little bit of advice. We're here to answer some start sit questions. We're here to answer some trade questions after we just kind of saw the NFL trade deadline go down. Last week, kind of a little bit of a different week. Like 2 weeks ago, we kind of saw like one game was only decided by single digit points. This was kind of different. It wasn't really crazy games, but as it turned out, I think majority of them were it came down to one score games. We saw the biggest upset since 2023 with the Panthers taking on the Panthers. It's 13 or the Panthers taking on the Packers as 13.5-point underdogs. And we saw an overtime game that could have went to a tie, but I salute Pete Carroll for going for the win because we don't need another tie. So I guess there was a couple fireworks this week. I don't know that there's anything crazy. I guess Rico Dowdle is kind of turned him into like
he's the thing. He's
a man possessed kind of like feels like he's leading the NFL in rush. And I think he's third. Feels like he's leading the NFL in rushing yards. Feels like he's only played like 3 games. So I guess shout out to the Carolina Panthers. Like they're probably gonna have to end up signing Rico Dowdle if they want to keep him, which would be very funny to give 2 running backs on their team big contracts after getting rid of Christian McCaffrey and Brian Burns and DJ Moore and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. But that feels like the Panthers' way to do it. But with that being said, Ashton, anything from you before we get into it here?
No, if you see me looking down at my phone, it's because I'm sweating Georgia, Southern, and East Carolina college basketball. So just despicable activities already.
I guess this is the first time college basketball is back since we've been on, which is incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm good. I've got Georgia Southern plus 5.5, and they are down 2 and still have a free throw to shoot at the line, so I'm probably good there.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, I had a rough week in cash. I made the mistake of so really the Giants 49ers game was the game to target in cash this week. You were playing Jackson Dart, you were playing Christian McCaffrey, you were supposed to be playing Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Mongai was an easy pick.
Yeah.
Where I went wrong was I decided to take the cheap running back approach, which I almost never do. Most of the time, especially in cash, I want to pay up for my running backs. So I ended up playing Tyrone Tracy, Kyle Mongai, and Travion Henderson just because they were all cheap, which the flip side of that was the cash lineup you actually needed was CMC and Theo Johnson, and then I just did the opposite where I played Tracy and George Kittle. I was able to jam Puka and Jamar Chase into my lineups, but it didn't really matter. So,
yeah, it was
a learning experience for sure.
Yeah, again, it was kind of like I said up top. It was kind of a week where nothing really happened, but a lot kind of happened. But I guess that kind of leads into this week, right? Like, I guess as a Packer fan, just the bias, right, is Tucker Kraft goes down. So now I guess we can get right into it. So Tucker Kraft goes down. I imagine a lot of people waiver wire pickup this week is going to be a Luke Musgrave, right? He kind of slides right into that starting tight end role. Drafted a round ahead of Tucker Kraft. And injuries and inconsistent plays kind of held him off the field for a little bit. Also, Tucker Kraft just being an animal. It's kind of held Luke Musgrave off the field. But owned in 0.2% of ESPN leagues, Luke Musgrave is. I would imagine that number jumps up as big as any will this year. I mean, the opportunity is there for Luke Musgrave. I don't love this matchup against Philadelphia right away. I think if you're picking him up, I think you might want to look, if you're looking to stream here, pick him up and pick someone else up, stream someone else. But 17.5% target share for Green Bay is going to Tucker Kraft, so those targets are open. Luke Musgrave is definitely an athletic guy. He's definitely a receiving type of player who can block as well, so he's going to be on the field. I think he's definitely worth a pickup. But as I said, I think Philadelphia is, especially with some ads that they've made at the deadline here. I think it's a tough matchup for Kraft, but again, I mean, this is what we talk about, right? It's all about opportunities. And we'll talk about Christian Watson in a second, but I mean, Matthew Golden goes down in that game. All of a sudden, there's a lot of receiving opportunities open in this Packers receiving core.
Yeah, for sure. I can remember when Kraft and Luke Musgrave kind of both, because they were drafted like a round apart, 2 rounds apart of the same year. and in Dynasty, it was Tucker Kraft was kind of an afterthought because they spent a 3rd round pick, I believe it was, on Luke Musgrave. So it's just kind of funny how the run out goes sometimes, especially, tight end is such a weird position. Like, you can never trust anything at tight end unless you see it on the field. But I feel like I liked Musgrave as a prospect, so I feel like I'm interested to see what he does. He's kind of just been banged up. I don't know why, but every time I think of Luke Musgrave, for some reason, Jay Sternberger comes to mind, which half the people on this podcast probably don't even know who that is, but you being a Packers guy, I know you know who that is. Streets will never forget.
He was the first guy to wear 87 after Jordy left. So there's some bias that I didn't like him. I remember that, and
yeah, just deep pulls. The only podcast bringing you Jay Sternberger hype, but
right.
I'm excited to see what he can do. We've talked about it. The Packers tight end doesn't really rotate off the field as much. Maybe they do now that Kraft is out, but just kind of wait and see. Throw him on your bench. Maybe if you really like the player. I think that if you're needing help this week, though, you probably can find better help elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that kind of a difference between Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, and this is Packers talk. I guess I'm probably going way too in depth on this, but the kind of the difference that I've seen with him, Tucker Kraft is kind of the bowling ball. You kind of just get the ball into his hands, however, and let him run through people. Luke Musgrave kind of feels more like a vertical down the seam kind of stretch guy, where you hit him on those pop passes, you hit him on those digs, kind of a Travis Kelce more than not that he's Travis Kelce, but a Travis Kelce-esque more than I'm trying to think of
Kittle.
Yeah, more than a George Kittle, which is fine, but I think that kind of coincides with Christian Watson, who, and I promise I'll get off Packer stuff here, but that kind of coincides with Christian Watson, who's the next one we're going to talk about. I mentioned there that Matthew Golden was out, he got knocked out of the game with a shoulder injury. Jaden Reed is still out. Dontavian Wicks didn't play. So all of a sudden it's Christian Watson, it's Romeo Doubs, and again, and Malik Heath. We've seen Jordan Love want to take the deep shots. He hit Christian Watson for a 51-yarder last week. He threw one into triple coverage that was intended for Christian Watson. I think it's still kind of in that realm of of that Alec Pierce, Jameson Williams big play kind of type of player. But given that if Golden does miss any time, and we know Kraft is missing time, Watson is probably targeted on those sideline routes that he's kind of made some bread and butter on. I think this really comes down. It really comes down to can Green Bay manufacture those deep ball plays that they win games doing that. So I like Christian Watson if you need like maybe you're at like a 3-6 team, or you just need something to. You need to throw a Hail Mary to get back into this playoff picture. I don't hate Christian Watson as a flex or even a wide receiver 3, maybe a low-end wide receiver 2 this week against Philadelphia.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely not counting on Christian Watson to do just too much for me, but he's always dangerous. Kind of Alec Pierce. Kind of like you said, he's dangerous to catch a 40, 50-yard pass really on any given play. I've been starting Alec Pierce at my receiving flex in a pretty deep, redraft league this year. So, sometimes it doesn't feel good, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And, Alec Pierce pops up for the random, I think it was 13 target game this week.
Yeah.
Something absurd like that. Which I never thought I would see the day that Alec Pierce got 13 targets in a game, but
when Indianapolis is playing from behind, they're going to be passing. Not that Indianapolis is playing from behind much, but Alec Pierce, actually the next guy we could talk about. So let's get into it. Owning 11.8% of leagues, as you mentioned, 13 targets. Indianapolis traded away Adonai Mitchell and 2 first-rounders for Sauce Gardner, which, say what you want about the trade. I think it works for both teams, given what both teams are trying to do this year. 80% of snaps. He's 80% of snaps. Really, the wide receiver 2 in Indianapolis. I know Josh Downs and Tyler Warren are involved in the middle of the field, but Alec Pierce is their deep threat guy. He's getting 2, 3, 4 of those deep looks a game. Daniel Jones isn't afraid to throw those. This is, again, we said it, a couple times now. This feels like a safer Christian Watson in my mind, but it feels like that same type of player where, I don't think you're scared off of Alec Pierce anymore. I think you throw him in your lineup and you hope that, I think you can probably count on at least 3 catches for 60 yards, and then everything else is extra. So if you need that, I'm totally fine picking him up and starting him this week.
Yeah, I think he's just a volatile kind of flex play, almost like if Trey Tucker was in a better offense and was actually like a focal part of his offense, in a sense that just really explosive, kind of down the field guy. Obviously they get the Falcons this week in Berlin, so I'm already planning my Raheem Morris funeral following this week's game. I saw a funny tweet earlier that was like, when the Falcons hired Raheem Morris, all of these coaches were available for hire, and it was like Ben Johnson, Jim Harbaugh, Mike McDonald, somebody else on that list too. I can't remember who else was on there, but it's just like a litany of coaches that are all like winning records this season. And he was a hire that whenever he was hired, that the majority of the fan base was like, oh, we're doing this thing again, because he was kind of a retread, because he was the interim, I believe, after Arthur Smith got fired.
Yeah.
I don't know. I saw someone suggest that the Falcons should trade Bijan Robinson to the Chiefs for a first. It's like, why? I don't. Just because you can say anything you want to on the internet doesn't mean you should, people. Just keep that in mind.
I think that's half the fun of the internet, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, nobody can call you out for your bad takes if they don't know who you are personally, I guess. But
right.
Getting back to topic, I think Alec Pierce is fine. Atlanta's pass defense hasn't been awful this year, but I doubt that it's going to be like, hey, let's take away Alec Pierce. They're probably going to be more concerned with stopping Jonathan Taylor and, Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman. So he probably pops up for a couple big catches this game. I still think Jonathan Taylor might go for 40 fantasy points this week, though.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but especially if you're going over, overseas, the game plan has to be, as simplified as possible, right? Like it's stop the run game, it's stop, the short yardage, and keep Indianapolis off the field. If that's the case, if there's ever a situation where Indianapolis is, I guess, kind of what we saw last week, where they're playing from behind. I mean, Alec Pierce, 13 targets, right? If Indianapolis needs to move the ball, it really feels like Alec Pierce is involved. So I'm with you on that. Running backs, we've talked about one of them. I'm not going to say it because I want people to go to FlurrySports.org. FlurrySports.org, Henry wrote up he does it every single week. He gives you 2 to 3 to 4 players who are low owned that you should be targeting. I guess, check it out now, put them in now, because I assume 98% of people's fantasy leagues, their waivers go through Wednesday at 2 a.m. So check that out. But Dylan Sampson is a guy who wrote up, which is kind of interesting, because the Browns, to me, it feels like they're leaning more towards, because as it stands through 10 weeks, this Browns rookie class certainly looks like it has potential to kind of to mold a team around and build for the future. But with that being said, it kind of felt like even when Quinshon Judkins was kind of coming in as his workhorse, Dylan Sampson wasn't out of this offense. Feels like they kind of want to go with the two-headed look, and especially with Quinshon Judkins hurt, with the shoulder injury, with his status up in the air. Cleveland's been running the ball well this year. I mean, Dylan Sampson only owned in 10.4% of leagues. If Quinshon Judkins is ruled out, I think Sampson is definitely is at least an RB2 this week, and only owned in 10.4% of leagues. I'd imagine a lot of Quinshon Judkins owners are going to be on the waiver wire looking for him. He might be my priority one this week, because the Browns want to run the ball. Dylan Gabriel's not that great of an NFL passer yet. So in order to move the ball, I mean, they play the Jets, who haven't done much of anything this year. I think signs are pointing in the right direction for Dylan Sampson this week.
Yeah, I think it really is going to hinge on if Judkins is out or not. I think most recent reporting I see is that Stefanski is saying, Coach Kevin Stefanski is saying that he's likely to be available against the Jets. That was yesterday, so things change all the time. We saw Lamar look great as far as injury designation reports go for a whole week, and then Saturday was suddenly ruled out before playing the Bears. So kind of a wait and see approach. I don't hate picking up Dylan Sampson. He was a guy that when I was evaluating prospects over the over the summer, I thought that he could play. I never thought of him. It's kind of weird. I thought that of all the players that we're talking about being like this PPR guy, this like out of the backfield kind of guy, I never thought he was going to be the one, because watching him at Tennessee, I always thought he was just kind of a more in between the tackles kind of grinder kind of player. I mean, I thought he could catch the ball. I just didn't think that it was his best utilization. So I think that if I'm picking somebody up that I want to be a little bit more sure about, maybe it feels really gross to say this, but Devin Singletary. I mean, I think we talked about it last week where when Scatterbo went out, Tracy kind of got the bulk of the work, and then it came back kind of the Singletary's way this week. Who knows whether that's sticky or not? Maybe that's just a hot hand kind of thing for the Giants moving forward. I don't know. I've always thought that Devin Singletary was solid at the very least. Even when he was with the Bills, I thought, he was okay. Never thought he was anything special, but, I thought he had a place in the league. I don't know. Running back's getting pretty desperate out there this week, other than the aforementioned guy that we talk about every week, Tajay Spears. But, yeah, it's kind of gross this week at running back.
Yeah. And Jacob in the chat, shout out Jacob. Welcome back. Appreciate you coming in. 12-man, half PPR, 2 flex. Starters, he has Drake May. He is starting Bijan and Rico at running back. JSN Igbuka at his receiver positions. Harold Fannin at his tight end position. Ashton Genty and Khalil Shakir. He's asking us if he's starting, if you're taking anyone on his bench here over Shakir. So Woody Marks, no. Bill Krosky-Merritt, no. Matthew Golden is injured. CeeDee Lamb's on bye. Theo Johnson, no. I think Shakir's the easy start here, right?
Yeah, I was sitting here looking like CeeDee on the bench, but then I had to remember, this is Cowboys bye week. So, yeah, I think Shakir. I think it's kind of weird. Like, I think for a while there, it was kind of like Khalil Shakir was just kind of going to be this, like, bit kind of player almost for the Bills. And he's kind of coming on all of a sudden as like a really reliable guy for Josh Allen. He's kind of done this a couple of years now where he's not really like a focal point of the offense because it's not really what the Bills do is like hyper target one guy ever since, Stephon Diggs left town. But he's being really efficient with the touches he does get. Obviously he kind of had a slight dud game this week if you're talking about like outside of if in half PPR, he probably didn't do much for you. But, we saw 2 weeks ago against the Panthers, he does kind of have that athleticism. I think he scored like a 50-yard touchdown. They play the Dolphins this week. Yeah, I think you just stick with Shakir anyway. CeeDee comes back. Obviously, that pushes Shakir to the bench, but I think he's probably going to be about as good as you can do in relief of CeeDee this week.
Not that not that they're the same player, not that they're the same build, athleticism, whatever. Feels like Shakir's kind of got that Cole Beasley-esque role that we kind of saw in Dallas, where it's just getting the ball in his hands on some drags, on some out routes, and kind of let him run. We'll target him in the red zone when needed. To your point, I think Shakir is. I mean, when you look at these Buffalo receivers, probably the number one receiving option. I think Buffalo kind of has a similar situation to Green Bay, where it's just get what the defense gives you, get the ball to the guy who works. But I think just looking at your bench, I'm not into Woody Marks. Bill Krosky-Merritt has certainly not lived up to that preseason hype. Theo Johnson, I don't love starting a tight end at flex. Unless you're in a tight end premium league. So I think Shakir's fine. Jacob's asking if you would drop anyone from his team. As always, it depends on who you're dropping them for. If you're making me drop one player just, in a vacuum, I would say Woody Marks because I don't believe in the Texas offense, especially if CJ Stroud is down, which I know is weird to say because CJ Stroud hasn't played to what his rookie year was. But I think the Texans are better with him at quarterback. I like Davis Mills, but not NFL Davis Mills. Yeah, I mean, Jacob, tell us who you're looking to drop him for. And we talked about this last week, Ashton. And I'm happy you brought this up, Jacob, with Genty. I mean, now, right? If you're like Genty's probably worth at least floating out there, given that he's got a brutal end of the year schedule, especially in the fantasy playoffs. So I think Genty, if you're not comfortable with Igbuka, I guess CeeDee and JSN is kind of hard to argue with. But I would flow Genty if you can see if you can if you can do anything with it. But I don't think you need to drop anyone. I think this is a good team when CeeDee's playing.
I'm interested to see what Genty does because obviously he's got the Broncos this week and then the so sought after holy grail matchup against the Boo Boo Cowboys defense. Probably the only other better matchup is the Bengals at this point. I think. I think it remains to be seen whether Quinnen Williams or Logan Wilson, either one can shore up their defense a little bit. My money's probably on not really. I think when you've got that many systemic issues on defense, I don't think two guys are really helping you out, especially when your secondary is as bad as theirs is. So certainly not a D tackle or a off-the-ball linebacker as good as they can be. We'll see. But I think – I don't know. I know my tune for the past couple weeks has been, wait until Genty has a couple blow-up games and see if we can get something for him. But, I mean, I'm interested to see if, maybe he can keep this momentum going because especially now that Brock Bowers is back and that gives teams something to think about other than him in the run game. Obviously no Jacoby Myers there now either, so they're kind of left pretty barren in the wide receiver room. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe give it 1 or 2 more weeks. Broncos is obviously a tough matchup. Cowboys in 2 weeks, and if he has a really good game, if he performs well against the Broncos, has a really good game against the Cowboys, maybe then I try and trade him because then it's Browns, Chargers, Dolphins, or Broncos, Philly, Houston. It's just rough.
And I'm going to get up my soapbox here. I've been talking about it all year. Look at Trey Tucker. I think he's a good player. He had the 40-point game right week 3. Now he's wide receiver 1 for Vegas with Jacoby Myers out. I know Brock Bowers is there.
Functionally, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep saying it. I know I'm wrong in saying it. I'm still a Geno believer. I'm a Trey Tucker believer. I think Vegas can be down in a lot of games, and they need someone to throw the ball to. Especially if you get two guys on Brock Bowers, someone's got to be there. So I'm gonna continue to say Trey Tucker, and that's probably going to end up, screwing me, and I'm gonna have to eat egg on this, but whatever. Let's talk about a tight end. Let's talk about Colson Loveland, who had his coming out party, right? Won the game for the Bears last year, and probably the game of the year so far in the NFL. So a lot of that came right when Cole Kmet. I guess Cole Kmet left very early, and that came with a concussion, which is always a weird injury because it feels like some guys come back right away from a concussion. Some guys take a couple of weeks. But if Colson Loveland's tight end 1 on the Chicago team, it's obvious that he's going to be used. They drafted him with the top 10 pick, top 12 pick, or whatever Chicago had.
It was 9th, yeah.
118 yards, 2 touchdowns. I know that they played the Bengals, but we're not. I think this is one where you pick up and proceed with caution, right? Because Roma Dunze probably doesn't get shut out much anymore. DJ Moore probably doesn't. I still think DJ Moore probably has somewhat of a solid role in this offense, and Luther Burden was out in that game. Colson Loveland's definitely worth a pickup, but again, I'm not expecting 118-yard 2 touchdown performance probably for the foreseeable future, right?
Yeah, that game's kind of still a sore subject for me. I got booted out of my guillotine league this week, and Rome goosing me, and Jahmyr Gibbs getting 5 points, and
I bet you're not the only one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good, especially since I just felt like I stole Jahmyr Gibbs off the waiver wire for only $50.
Wow.
I was ready to roll. We're tied in premium too, and I had Laporta, Trey McBride, Pickens, Jalen Waddle, and then I had Gibbs and Derrick Henry. Drake May at quarterback. I was sitting here thinking, okay, I've got one guy that's got more money than me. If he can get booted out before I get out, I'll be fine because I've got way more money than everybody else. And yeah, all it takes is one bad week. That's all it takes.
We in one of my guillotine leagues, I probably told you this, 32 teams, and everyone drafts a team. So like before this year starts, I drafted the Rams, so I get all the guys on the Rams. The guy who drafted the Cincinnati Bengals was out week 1. Cincinnati put up that stinker week 1. Mm-hmm. And so then based off whoever had the 32nd pick gets the most fab, and then it kind of works its way all the way down to the first pick. Jamar Chase was on the waiver wire. Someone spent like $1,400 on Jamar Chase, just blew their whole budget right away. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I think that person was out week 2.
Yeah. Jamar was fab dumped, I think 3 times in that guillotine league. And it wasn't really like an issue with him. It was just like he was cursed. Him and Jalen Hurts both had a curse for a little bit.
I've noticed that. I'm in a couple guillotine leagues. I've noticed that whoever has Jamar Chase is like the next team that's out.
Yeah, he's just a hand grenade, and it's not even necessarily his fault. It just pick him up. The rest of your team just grabs the bed, I guess.
Baxter in the chat. Welcome, Baxter. Thoughts on Brian Thomas Jr. after the addition of Jacoby Myers? I don't think it certainly helps. I don't think it helps Brian Thomas Jr.'s case. I'm not a huge Jacoby Myers guy. I think he's fine. I think he has a role in this offense. I don't think it necessarily affects Brian Thomas right away. But with Travis Hunter out, we've seen Brian Thomas already work with the wide receiver 2. Jacoby Myers is going to fit into that Travis Hunter spot. So I don't think it necessarily hurts Brian Thomas Jr. at all. It kind of feels like a plug and play for Jacksonville, and just have Brian Thomas still be the alpha dog in this receiving room, right?
Yeah, agree totally. I don't think that they play the same position, but they play different roles, right? Like Jacoby Myers is more of kind of like a dirty work kind of guy, or maybe kind of more of a replacement for Travis Hunter. Maybe I think in this offense stylistically than Brian Thomas Jr. I think it could help him if it helps kind of give defenses something else to think about. But whether that is the case or not remains to be seen for sure.
Yeah, Ski in the chat with a question. Let us know. We'll be here for We'll be here till at least 9 o'clock. If we run out of things to talk about, we'll just riff for a little bit. So let us know, Ski. I should say 9 o'clock Central. I guess not everyone lives in the Central Time Zone. Which, by the way, Central Time Zone. Are you in the Central Time Zone?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Central Time Zone is by far the best for sports, right?
I think so. I lived briefly in the East Coast time zone for a few years. I say a few years, so it was a few months, and it was just awful, man. You're talking about like Monday Night Football ending at like midnight. You go to work on Tuesday, and you're just so tired. And but then if you live on the West Coast, it's the opposite. Sunday football starts at like 8 o'clock, or 10 o'clock. Sorry, not 8. So it's just like, what do you do?
So my issue with that, living in California, which I think it'd be fun to wake up to the slate. Go get your coffee, do whatever, take a shower, and then by the time you sit down, football's on. I think that's what kind of sucks about Central Time Zone. You wake up and you have to like try to kill 2 or 3 hours, which I guess the London game is nice when that comes in. But that's what, a 6 a.m. London game. If
you're on the West Coast for sure. Yep.
The Rams or Chargers are playing. That kind of sucks to wake up 6 in the morning on Sundays, right?
For sure. And obviously different sport, but imagine trying to be like a English Premier League fan on the West Coast. Yeah. You're talking about catching the games at like 4 a.m. because those games start at some of them start around like 6 Central, some of them start around like 7. Their like main like primetime game will start at like 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah.
Not fun.
I do like the idea of the East or the Pacific time zone of living in California, where like I guess I keep using California, but anywhere in the Pacific time zone, where Sunday Night Football is over and you still have like 2 or 3 hours before you really need to start going down to bed. Like that's kind of fun. But really, I guess kind of what I think of is like once that night game ends, that's when I know it's time to wind up.
Yeah, time to go to sleep. Yep.
Ski. Should he trade Kyren Williams for Bucky Irving? I'm in a no PPR league and I'm 5-4.
No PPR. I think you stay with Kyren.
Yeah,
I think so.
I don't love single player for single player, single position for single position. Ski, if this trade is offered to you, Zach talks about this all the time. That they probably think that they're getting this over on you. So try to add something in there if you're really in. Try to get something else alongside Bucky Irving. I think Kyren Williams moving forward probably continues to have better shots for touchdowns. I think that Rams offense is humming. I know they played the Saints last week, but I think the Rams are kind of a juggernaut that people aren't really talking about, which they kind of are. And Bucky Irving's coming off injury, so who knows? I like no PPR. I like Kyren. PPR, I like Bucky. So I think if you're going to do this, try to get a little bit more for Kyren if you can.
I think the big thing with Kyren this year is he's just not really scoring touchdowns at the same rate. I mean, which is obviously goofy to say. It's the most volatile part of fantasy football is like predicting touchdowns. But I mean, he's got some decent matchups coming up. I mean, he scored 32 on the 49ers earlier this season. Granted, that was on the back of 2 receiving touchdowns and 8 catches for 66 yards. But I don't know, man. Yeah, I think I stay with Kyren. Bucky, has they even said Bucky's coming back yet? I mean, what's his injury status looking like? Yeah, he's not even playing. So they were on bye this past week. I don't think they've said anything about him for this week. Yeah.
So I guess that's one to monitor. Right, we'll get the first injury report tomorrow. If you're really in on Bucky Irving and he's full practice, I guess I don't hate the trade. Again, I don't like trading one position for one position. I don't really think it benefits anyone, or it benefits someone and it doesn't benefit others, right? One player is going to be better than the other, so figure out what that is. And if you think you're kind of getting effed over, like I said, add something to that trade.
Kind of crazy to think Kyren Williams is still only like 25 years old.
I know.
I feel like that guy should be like 40.
It doesn't really help Kyren Williams either, and I'm the biggest Davante Adams fan probably on earth. That Davante Adams is just he's unguardable on the goal line. And I think that he's probably like you don't really see wide receivers being running back vultures. But the Rams have kind of went that way. I was really happy to see Kyren get in the end zone when they got up big against the Saints. But yeah, to your point, like those touchdowns aren't there. But I think he has as good of a shot as Bucky Irving does to score touchdowns, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of where I land is because I think part of Bucky's appeal is he's going to catch a lot of passes in like kind of a really high volume passing attack for the Buccaneers. Granted, he's had a couple games this season where he's had a bunch of carries as well, but I was looking at his stats. He turned 25 carries against the Jets of all teams into 66 yards, which is just not a good look.
Right.
Take this with a grain of salt. I wasn't the biggest Bucky fan when he came out of the draft. I didn't think he was really that great. I was actually pretty stone cold that I thought Sean Tucker was better, which shows what I know, I guess. But yeah, I think I stay. I think I stay with Kyron in that situation.
Baxter back in. Thoughts on trading Jahmyr Gibbs, Brian Thomas Jr., and Cortland Sutton for Josh Jacobs and St. Brown? I think it's fine. I don't love Brian Thomas. Cortland Sutton I like. I think he's kind of he does better right in certain matchups, which is kind of weird. It feels like Sutton's been doing better against good defenses, worse against bad defenses. I guess that's probably Bo Nix spreading it around compared to just toning in onto one guy. Josh Jacobs should, he's playing banged up that nobody's really talking about. I don't know if you watched the game against the Panthers, but I feel like every time he ran, he got up holding his shoulder, and the next one he got up holding his hand, the next one he got up holding his knee. Green Bay likes Emmanuel Wilson. Emmanuel Wilson's going to continue to run outside the tackles. But I think the best player, Gibbs is probably the best player. The second best is St. Brown. And I guess the third best player in this is Josh Jacobs. So I don't hate this. Baxter, if you're in a position where you can give up a little bit of depth to get probably two better players than Brian Thomas and Sutton, I don't hate this trade, I don't think.
Yeah, I think let me just look at this here. Yeah, Jacobs is RB5 right now in the season. Gibbs is RB8. I think they're kind of a wash for me.
Yeah.
I think Jacobs is just – I'm pulling up his, lines for the season. Holy touchdown machine. The only game he hasn't scored at least one rushing touchdown was against the Browns, which, okay, that's excusable. But, every other week, it's just, touchdown, two touchdowns. I mean, he went 3 straight games. Granted, the bye week was in there against the Cowboys, the Bengals, and the Cardinals. Take that with a grain of salt. But of 2 rushing touchdowns each game, which is just awesome. He's got the Eagles this week, but then he gets the soft matchup against the Giants the next week. Still gets to play the Bears twice. Oh wow. Yeah, honestly, I think I pull trigger on this, especially if I need someone like alpha at wide receiver. If I've got the wide receiver depth to give up, I think Jacobs could be a sneaky buy to help you out sometime later in the playoffs, especially because week 14 gets the Bears, week 16 gets the Bears again. So he gets a really soft defensive matchup, twice in the fantasy playoffs. That's about as good as it's going to get.
I agree with you. Nino, welcome back, brother. Good to see you back. Appreciate it. Did a big trade today. Yeah, let's do it. So his team is Drake May and Jackson Dart at quarterback, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, Travis Etienne, Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, Blake Corum, running back, Jamar Chase, Cortland Sutton, and Mecca Buka, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Tez, and Jalen Noel at receiver, Tyler Warren at tight end. So he sent ETN, Egbuka, and Sutton for Puka and Ridley. Incredible.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So
I think that's selling really high on Emeka Egbuka, and personally, I love it. We've kind of already seen it happen where he was flying really close to the sun, and he started to cool off a lot before the bye week. You couldn't run much hotter than he was,
right,
leading up to that week 9 bye. Yeah, I mean your team's stacked with JT and Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. I know the rest of your league is pissed at that guy for trading you that.
For sure. So just looking at at your team as a whole here, just breaking it down. So May Dart, I don't think it matters who you start. You have a good quarterback starting. You'll be starting. We'll just assume it's 2 running back, 2 receiver, tight end flex. Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams, great running back duo. Wide receivers are going to be now Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, great. Tight end Tyler Warren, and then you're probably at your flex. I guess you're starting. I guess it doesn't matter, but I guess you're starting Keenan Allen. Or you're picking between Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, which I think you can probably upgrade at some point at. But I think that's fine because you have such star talent that can carry a mediocre player at your flex.
Yeah, I don't mind flexing Keenan Allen. I mean, he's been getting a lot of work. He's not really going away. I mean, Unk can still play. It seems so.
Yeah. Cool. Anyone else in watching, please drop some questions. We'll be here for about another 10, 12, 13 minutes, something like that. We love answering questions. And if anyone in the audience has any answers to the questions, please feel free. Let's make this space where everyone can kind of, we're just talking ball here. We're talking ball before people even really think about this week.
Exactly.
So the other quarterback, we talked about him last week, that might be on some radar, Trevor Lawrence. A solid option, right? He kind of had a down to start the year, and it's kind of been turned around a little bit. He's 4 straight games scoring, 17 or more points, which is nothing to gawk at. not a great, he didn't favor that great matchup against Vegas, but he kind of saved it with 2 rushing touchdowns, which is part of his offense, right? He's not this like Trevor Lawrence is not a sit back Peyton Manning kind of player. He's a guy who goes out and makes plays, and he certainly has the legs to do it. Tough defense this week with Houston. But I like if you have to have something at quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. I don't love the matchup against Houston. I talk about it all the time that I'm petrified of this Houston defense. And we kind of saw Azeez Al-Shaair last year, like almost kill Trevor Lawrence
to decapitate him, basically.
Yeah, I don't love him to start this week. But if you're looking ahead to bye week replacements, like 17 points in 4 straight start is nothing to gawk at, right?
Yeah, I just hate starting Trevor Lawrence, and I'm forced into it now. And one of my dynasty leagues with Jaden Daniels going down with what looked like a pretty nasty injury.
Yeah, bad.
Definitely sucks for him. I'm just looking at this. He turned 50 total touches, so 48 pass attempts, we'll call it, and 2 rushes against the Rams into 19.8 fantasy points. What are we doing, Trevor?
Yeah.
And the Raiders defense is pretty maligned. They suck. He doesn't even throw a touchdown. Granted, he ran in too, but I just feel like if I'm playing Trevor Lawrence, I'm hoping he does the same things Jackson Dart does for me, and I somehow feel less confident in Trevor Lawrence.
I agree with you 100%.
Jackson Dart. Because at this point, he's not throwing touchdowns. He's never really been a guy who throws a ton of touchdowns. He's thrown 3 touchdowns once this year, and that was against the Bengals. The only other time he threw more than 1 was against the Seahawks when they were dealing with a lot of injuries. So, what am I getting out of Trevor Lawrence that I wouldn't already be getting out of Jackson Dart, essentially?
Right. Yep. Let's touch on Jacoby Myers one more time. What's the stock at with Jacoby Myers? Same, higher, or lower? Take what I say with a grain of salt because I don't think Jacoby Myers is a very good football player. He steps into a role where he's not the wide receiver 1 anymore. I think people are probably going to clown me for this. I think Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. And I think I think Jackson probably can't run the ball as well as Vegas. So long story short, I think it probably ends up about the same. Probably a little bit less just because he's not the featured guy. But if you have Jacoby Myers, I'm not totally scared off that he's entering a room with more mouths now.
Yeah, I think for real life football, I think this helps him out. I think for fantasy, it's kind of like you said. I just don't know how impactful he's going to be.
Yeah.
Obviously he's going to, we think, a better offense. I don't even think it's we think. I think we're pretty sure it's a better overall offensive environment at least. I think he steps in while Travis Hunter's out and is immediately there. Well, I don't know. Parker Washington, I don't really know where he lines up alignment-wise. I feel like he plays a lot in the slot, but I could be wrong because he's only 5'10". For some reason, I was thinking Parker Washington was this 6'5", 6'6", big slot guy, but he's only 5'10".
Got the name for it.
Yeah. Interesting. It kind of makes me wonder if Parker Washington's going to play more in the slot or if they're just going to immediately throw Jacoby Myers there and let him go to town. I think, I don't know if for fantasy, I just don't know how much it affects him. I think it's pretty much probably about the same. Did you see Breece Hall today on Twitter? No. Absolutely just fuming that he didn't get traded. It's bad vibes. It's really bad vibes.
My thought on this is kind of the thought I always have with these midseason trades with fantasy football is if you don't really feel something one way or another, kind of what I feel right now with Jacoby Myers, that just means it's the same to me, right? If he goes to a team and you don't say, holy cow, this could benefit him so much, then how much does it really benefit him, And then you say, why would he go there? How much lower is it? Again, it feels like the same. He's fine, right? He feels like a 5 catch for 55 to 70 yards, and hopefully a touchdown.
He's a dirty work guy. That's kind of what he's been his entire career. He's like an underrated dirty work kind of player. Yep. He had 1 or 2 really good seasons in New England, kind of maybe boosted his stock a little bit in the eyes of the football community. But there's roles for those kind of players. They keep getting signed to teams for reasons and it's not because they're got good PR or anything.
Shout
Zach,
out
good shout from Zach.
In the chat. Washington's been split pretty between slot and out wide. I know Zach was a Parker Washington guy. I think he's probably a little bit pissed off that Jacoby Myers won here. But to your point, right? It means Jackson. You guys are line up everywhere. I don't even Liam Cohen's fine. I don't think that Jacksonville knows what they're doing. They need to figure out the quarterback position first. But let's get back to Ski here. So he was the Kyron Williams for Bucky Irvin straight up trade. He's looking for help on how he can improve it a little bit. His team is Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Quinshon Judkins, Lad McConkey, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Kyron Williams, George Pickens, Javonte Williams, Daniel Jones, Ricky Pearsall, Theo Johnson, and Tajay Spears. I think his team is good as it is. So you're starting Lamar, you're starting Derrick Henry, you're starting Kyron Williams. Receiver is probably where the upgrade is needed, right? It's hard to really rely on McConkey and A.J. Brown to be those put the team on your back kind of guys. So that makes me think that if you want to trade Kyron Williams, maybe a Kyron Williams and a Tajay Spears, or maybe even if a team's sitting at quarterback, maybe a quarterback puts them over the edge. I don't hate trying to pass Daniel Jones and Kyron Williams off to get a real strong upgrade at a receiver position.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that exactly. As you're holding on to two pretty good quarterbacks here. Obviously, it's kind of hard to deal quarterbacks in redraft just because, unless you're playing in Superflex or 2QB, it's there's always some available. But Daniel Jones has quietly been I guess it's not really been quiet because anyone that'll if you listen to anyone talk, he's been awesome this year. And I think underrated aspect of the Colts trading away all that capital to kind of load up, get Sauce Gardner is that I think they really feel good about Daniel Jones and the way he's played this year. And you don't trade away future first round picks if you think your quarterback situation might be bad soon. So, yeah, I don't know if someone's out there. If someone just lost Jaden Daniels, for example, whoever the Jaden Daniels owner in his league, maybe take a look at his team. If he doesn't have a good option to replace him, and he's staring down the barrel of, do I start Trevor Lawrence? Do I start Marcus Mariota? Do I start Geno Smith or whoever? Maybe I float Daniel Jones and Kyron out there and see if maybe he has I don't even know off the top of my head. Maybe he has a Devontae Adams on his team or something like that. Someone that, is good, really good for fantasy, but is maybe a little bit more low key that someone's not necessarily going to think about.
Right.
Because I even had to look, just to check, and, Devontae Adams is wide receiver 8, I think, right now in full PPR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, full, wide receiver 8. Kyron for Ibuka, I don't know. We kind of touched on this a little bit. I feel like Ibuka was running really hot and running really close to the sun, and he kind of cooled off. Maybe, the bye week was a chance for him to kind of, if he had some kind of injury stuff going on, get right. Because I think he was kind of banged up going into the bye.
My initial thought was I don't like this trade. I just pulled up Emeka Egbuka, what we've seen from him in the past. So the past 3 games, wide receiver 69, wide receiver 34, wide receiver 55. And Chris Godwin is going to be back at some point. Tez Johnson's involved. Cade Otton's involved. Cameron Johnson's involved. Bucky Irvin's going to be back. I like Emeka Egbuka. I think he's a great player. I think he was kind of the benefit of guys going down and Baker Mayfield finding a target. I think there's a lot of mouths to feed, so I think this would be a downgrade for you, Ski. But to Ashton's point, if you want to, I think in order to upgrade that wide receiver position, right? You said Devontae Adams, a T. Higgins comes to mind. Maybe these guys that are, these wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, maybe a wide receiver 1 on a bad team that are, to your point, are not really the superstars on guys' teams. I think that's who you're targeting here. I don't think you're looking for a downgrade from Kyron Williams, obviously.
Yeah, I think, just throwing names out there, Garrett Wilson is probably, you might be able to trade for him just because I feel like there might be people that are scared about the Jets' offensive circumstances. Jalen Waddle is probably not out of their own possibility. I mean, Michael Pittman's probably not a bad pickup.
I like Michael Pittman. What do you think about a Drake London? Do you think you can get him away?
Personally, I love Drake London. Obviously I'm a little biased as a Falcons fan. I was daring to say it before the game. I was like, is Drake London kind of entering that top? Well, the conversation I was having with some of my league mates started with, I think JSN is top 3 wide receivers in football right now. I don't think there's a question about it anymore. I think it's Jamar Chase, Jay Jettas, JSN, and you can argue with the wall as a top 3. Put them in any order you want. I don't care. They're all great. Drake London, he's just so good at playing bully ball receiver. He's just so strong at the catch point. It's so hard to knock the ball out of his hands once he gets it. If he gets the ball to his hands, it's so hard to knock it out.
Yeah.
And he was one of those guys coming out that, because he's 6'4", 215, kind of got that moniker as a jump ball kind of 50-50 guy. But when I was, watching him as a prospect, I thought he was kind of smooth and it was a decent enough separator that he wouldn't be just kind of pigeonholed into that role. So I think you're talking to the wrong guy if you want a level-headed take on Drake London, because I think he could be, arguable top 6, top 7 wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, and shout out. So I just looked up real quick just to get just an idea of what wide receivers are. George Pickens is wide receiver 3 right now in half point PPR. Shout out George. He with 2 top 10. Let's see, you got a wide receiver 15, wide receiver 2, and a wide receiver 1 finish, and then he's just been middle of the road. So George Pickens has been consistent. I know CeeDee Lamb's back. I think you can get better than George Pickens. I don't think he probably keeps wide receiver 3 the rest of the year. But that's just an interesting thing. Wide receiver 3 for George Pickens. Shout out, man.
Yeah, I think George Pickens might be a tough one to buy just because I think whoever the Pickens owner is probably remembering all those really good finishes he had for him. And it's probably like, no, I want to hold on to this guy because he's going to start nuking for me again. He's going to start carving out this role or that role. And, CeeDee's such a target hawk. Who knows if it even comes back to him. But, man, you got me talking about Drake London, man. You got my heart pounding. I love that guy.
That's all I got. If Ashton, you got anything else before I sign us off here? Anyone else with questions, drop them real quick. We'll be out in a couple minutes. Go to flurrysports.org to see our full or Henry's full breakdown of every player that needs to be on your radar when you're putting in your waiver pickups before you go to bed tonight. There are a couple guys on there that we did not touch on. It's a little teaser. It's a little self-promotion to go to flurrysports.org. Check it out. We've got tons of fantasy football stuff out. Zach's got a snap count article out that's awesome. Gives you everything you need to know about who's on the field, when they're on the field, what position they play on the field. And then we will get, as always, our waiver wire pickup by position. We'll give you a start sit-em, which will be interesting with the trade deadline. And with tight end is always an odd position. So we'll try to give you a little insight. And I'm happy that Zach brought you up. And this is everything what everyone else should also go check out is the Flurry Sports Podcast with Zach and Jake. They're two very funny guys. I jumped in on their show last night to ask them a very important question, which is what is the perfect amount of beers? Ashton, I assume you're a beer guy.
Honestly, I really don't drink beer that much. I do once a year. I give myself one weekend a year where I can just be a degenerate. Me and my buddies, we've got this trip that we take. We've been doing it for 4 or 5 years now. We go whitewater rafting. This place about three hours east in the Smoky Mountains. It's called Ocoee Lake. And just my buddy, his name's Hunter. We call him Lank. But Lank, he rode up there with me. We stop at the Walmart or Kroger or wherever we're picking up beers at. And he's got 2 30 racks of Busch Light under each arm, and puts them in the buggy. And he's like, "Well, those are just for me. Should I grab another one for anyone else?" And we were just like, "All right, man. Yeah, do you?" I think it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I think perfect number of beers for me, I think, is about between 6 and 8. I think is a good. I'm a pretty big guy, so it takes me a lot to get too rough. But I think 6 beers is a very good number.
Yeah, so check out our Flurry Sports YouTube page. Our conversation is cut up into a video that's going up tomorrow. I'll give my full insight on this. I agree with you. It's all situational. What are you doing? How are you doing it? When are you doing it? I think my answer on this, and as always, I'm going to say I'm biased in this, and it's not something that I'm proud of, but it's something that I'm proud of. Living in Green Bay, it's like the national pastime is drinking outside of football. So I said like 10 to 15 beers. But if you're sitting down watching football on a Sunday, I think, I like that 6 to 8 number. But I don't know. So we give you all the scenarios you need to know.
My issue with beer always comes in with I just get full before start feeling anything. So that's why I just prefer liquor. I just give me some tequila, give me some whiskey, anything that hard. Just give it to me. I'll figure it out from there. I do love a good shotgun though. You can't go wrong with a good shotgun. Cheap little shotgun.
When I was in college, so do you remember? So it was the COVID year where Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were like the 2 best players in football. Devontae Adams had 18 touchdowns. Me and my buddy shotgun a beer every time Devontae Adams scored a touchdown. That was one of the most fun Packer seasons I've ever sat and watched.
That's awesome.
But Titan Styles got one more question before we leave for the night. Chase and Pickens are on a bye. Only healthy wide receiver to plug in is Jameson Williams. Benches Ramondre Stevenson, Woody Marks, Kamani Vidal, Kyle Munagai. So I can't drop anyone. Should I trade Ramondre for DJ Moore? I don't hate this. I'm wondering do you think there's any more value in Kamani Vidal right now? Trade him as when you can before Amari Hampton comes back.
I'm not sure. I will say this about Vidal. He's kind of on my shit list right now because he was part of that group that got booted out of the Guillotine League. My assumption was, Chargers are going to run it up on the Titans. Running back's probably going to be a good play, but dunce cap, I guess, for me. I don't hate this as a trade. I think you've got really good, solid. Depending on what your other running backs are, Kyle Monangai, he played really well.
I don't hate that
awesome.
as a sell high trade either.
Yeah, I don't either. I was just going to say that I wouldn't be surprised if when Swift comes back, whether it's this week, next week, whenever. I haven't seen anything on his injury status yet, but teams love to just go right back to the guy for whatever reason, even if the other guys come in playing just as well. And Swift's always been one of these guys where he plays just good enough to hang around, but never good enough to earn a big money contract, really. Yeah, I mean, they get the Giants this week too, so that's a really soft running back matchup as well. Yeah, I don't know. I may try. Let's see.
Yeah, you're starting Saquon and you're starting who's ever probably starting as the Bears running back, right? As your running backs, I guess. I like Ramondre Stevenson. I think when he's on the field, he's involved. I think he has a really good chance of scoring a touchdown as any running back, probably in the NFL, not named Jonathan Taylor or any of the big name guys. I think I'm trying to sell. Just looking at your team Titan, I think I'm trying to sell high on Monaghan right now, and really play up that. Hey, DeAndre Swift sucks. He was out. Look what Monaghan did, and then sell him for that receiver, and then when Swift comes back, he's starting. Then you can kind of have that laugh too.
Yeah, I think that's what I would try and do. I don't hate trying to trade Ramondre. I think this week watching Travion Henderson as the guy for a week kind of gave me security that I don't think they're going to go away from Ramondre anytime soon. He just doesn't really look like he's ready to be. Right? Yeah, he's just not ready, I don't think, yet to be that guy. And I just think it kind of goes back. The whole process leading up to draft season, I was so in on Quinshon Judkins being the RB1 from the class. Well, outside of GNT, obviously, but I thought Judkins was really good. I thought he was even touching the GNT tier. I was that high on him. I thought he was awesome. And then Henderson starts getting buzz as this super explosive, whatever guy. And I was just I didn't really see that on his college tape. If anything, I thought Judkins was the really explosive guy, but all of a sudden it was everything was backwards. Judkins was the grinded out kind of battering ram guy, and Henderson was the really quick and explosive guy. And I was just I saw that the complete opposite way personally from their college tape, but I'm not a professional evaluator. Don't take my advice for any reason. There's a reason why I've been playing Dynasty as long as I have, and I don't have any championships. Sometimes I've got good evals. Sometimes I don't. Take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. So Titan Style really wants to get rid of Vidal. Now looking at your team, you probably can't do it, Titan. But just looking at it, I'm wondering, you can't do it because he's just such a good player. He's probably the best player in your team. Wondering if you really want to get rid of Vidal, if you just kind of float out Jamar Chase. I know you don't want to do it. You're not going to do it. But, I mean, that might draw up some interest in, maybe you get a starting running back, an RB2 and maybe a wide receiver 2 back that you can kind of place in right away. Maybe even a wide receiver 3 in that. I know it's not sexy to do that. I know. But, if you're trying everything, I mean, I don't think Chase is totally off the table for you here.
Yeah, my moniker is always nobody's untouchable. Even in Dynasty, nobody's untouchable for the right price. I think that's just a good way to go about it, because if you start telling yourself, okay, well, this guy's not for sale no matter what, I think you're really kind of hamstringing yourself along a path that, because you can tell yourself all day long, Jamar Chase isn't for sale, but if somebody comes to you and is like, hey, I want to give you Puka Nacua plus for Jamar Chase, you're probably making that deal because you're getting probably the same player. I mean, let's be real. I think it's tricky waters to get into.
Yep. Tyler Shutter in the chat. Would you trade Tyler and Jalen Warren? I assume Tyler Warren and Jalen Warren for Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard. He has Brock Bowers and Rondé Gadsden, but I don't know if I'm giving up too much. I know
you said you would never flex a tight end, but brother, this is a situation where I would think about it.
Yeah. I think you can probably get better than, well, maybe not, because Rico is probably worth so much right now. If you have to have a running back, I don't hate this. I don't think Jalen Warren, Jalen Warren had 2 touchdowns last week, now that I think about it. But I know
he's quietly kind of just completely iced.
Yeah.
Whoops, pulled up the wrong Warren. I want to go pull up Jalen Warren.
I do like moving Tyler Warren for Rico Dowdle. Jalen Warren, to your point, has been good. But to me, this really comes down to I think Tyler Warren and Jalen Warren combined are probably Rico Dowdle. So, yeah, I think this is fine.
Yeah, I started to say that he's iced Kenneth Gainwell, and I wanted to fact check myself and make sure I wasn't just talking out of my ass. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell had 8 touches last week. Jalen Warren had 18. So I think I'm not going to call that iced, but he's definitely getting the lion's share of the work. He didn't really have a good rushing yards day, but like you said, scored twice. Obviously, he still gets the Bengals and the Bears a couple times. Gets the Dolphins too in there. So I think there's some good matchups ahead for Jalen Warren. I think Rico Dowdle though is kind of, if there was one team that I've been worried about playing Rico Dowdle against, it would have been the Packers. And I don't know if that's an accurate way of thought, because I just, my brain, I was like, okay, Packers defense is pretty solid. I probably don't want to play them Rico Dowdle, especially a game where I think that everyone thinks the Panthers are probably going to get beat by at least multiple scores. Mm-hmm. And credit to the Panthers, they kind of just showed up and played their ball, and it worked out for them. Honestly, Rico Dowdle could go on a tear here to kind of end the year. It does suck that his bye week's week 14. That's probably in your fantasy playoffs and for some of y'all's leagues, which is obviously not ideal. He gets the Saints, Falcons, 49ers, Rams for the bye. Yeah, that's kind of where I was at. Is he kind of just needs a wide receiver for this week. I don't love dropping Vidal, but knowing that, let me check. What's Hampton's injury status looking like? Okay, so he's not expected back until after week 12.
I think week 11 they have their bye.
So week 12 is the bye. So they've got Pittsburgh, Jacksonville the bye week. So he might be back week 13. I don't know, based on who his other running backs were, because it was Saquon, Etienne, Jalen Warren. No, it was a different guy with Jalen.
It was Saquon, Etienne, and DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I don't know. See, that's the tough one. Is I don't know. Like, Vidal's good enough to kind of break into that 3-pack of running backs, but I don't know if he's so good that it'd be worth not having a wide receiver this week. You know what I mean? Like, if I needed somebody to just throw in my lineup and have.
Yeah, I'm going to try to move Monangai, I think, over Vidal. I think you play up the week he had, especially if you just need someone for 1 week. I think, given your running back, I think you're fine if you move on from Monangai. To what I said before, I don't think he sees a week that he saw last week against the really bad Cincinnati Bengals defense. I think Chicago's kind of got a brutal schedule moving forward here. So just as a play-in guy, I think Monangai is the move to trade here. And Patrick, I see you in the chat here. We'll get to your question real quick. Rank these wide receivers: Pierce, Tucker, Beck. PPR trying to pick up one on waivers. My initial thought is Pierce, Tucker, Beck.
Yeah, I think the way they're listed here is where I go about them. I'm interested. I'm intrigued by Jack Besh in Dynasty. I don't think you're touching him for redraft just yet. We kind of need to wait and see. We kind of talked about it earlier in the show where Pierce and Tucker are kind of the same player. They just one plays on a lot better offense and is, a lot bigger, I guess. But stylistically and kind of some of the stuff they're asked to do is kind of similar. I think Tucker could be more of a gadgety guy though than Pierce, because Pierce to me is just a pure down the field kind of guy. But I think I'm with you. I think it's Pierce, Tucker, Besh.
And then Tyler, last one before we get out of here. He has Pickens, Adams, and Jefferson as the receivers. So yes, I would do Tyler Warren and Jalen Warren for Rico. Great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, that is all I got. Ashton, I appreciate it as always being on. Everyone, I appreciate you in the chat. We will be back. Shows Wednesday, Thursday this week. Titan, if you make a trade or do anything, hop back into one of our shows later this week. Let us know. And if you're still working it out, we'll continue to help you work it out. So let us know if you make any ground on it. But with that being said, once again, he is Ashton Rich. I am Luke Reimer. This was the Week 10 Fantasy Football Waiver Pickup Show. Answering questions, just hanging out. We'll be back this time next week, 8:15, somewhere in there Central Time. So I appreciate everyone, and we will see you next week.